For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lori Carpenos. I live in Connecticut, in New England. So here's what happened. Back in 1985, um, in my previous life, when I say that, I just, I don't feel as old as those numbers. But I was invited to a Sydney Banks talk, and I had no idea what I was getting into. It totally flipped my life around in beautiful, miraculous, incredible ways. And through all those years, this understanding has just deepened. Like I get together with Wendy and we plan a program, and I'm learning from Wendy. Wendy's learning from me. It's an amazing community of people that how we all learn from each other, and everybody is so generous with um, wanting to help us ground even deeper. So we're going to remind you of this at the end, but no, I don't want to go there yet. Yeah, why don't you take it from here, Wendy?
Sure. So I'm Wendy Williams, and I'm a nurse. And I'm going to tell you that deep listening has impacted me personally and professionally very profoundly. Professionally, as a registered nurse for many years, I was taught that listening meant active listening. That meant mirroring people, nodding, remembering what they said, saying it back to them. Oh, so you have a lot of pain in your lower leg, or whatever, right? Active listening is one sort of listening, but deep listening goes beyond that. And what I've learned in this is that it's not a skill to be learned, it's something to be remembered. We all remember how to listen deeply. And I'm going to tell you a personal story from just today. I happen to belong to a 12-step program. And in that 12-step program, we go around and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and and I haven't realized, but for the past 17 years, when I've been in that 12-step program, what do I do every single time I'm in those meetings? I'm listening deeply to the other people. And what listening deeply means is there's nothing else on my mind except what are they saying? And I want to make sure that they feel seen, heard, and understood. And that's it. That's what we do. And no one sat me down in my early days in the 12-step program and says, this is how you listen. It was just clear. We were there to support one another and love one another. And you learn in the early days how to listen deeply. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is listening deeply and what that means and what it doesn't mean. So I'm so glad that you're all here. I'm trying to making sure that everybody in the room is has made it into the room, and I don't think there's anybody in the waiting room, so that's a good thing. All right, great. So, Lori, what's going on next here?
Yes, I'm just admitting one person now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay. So, what we'd like to do, want to see first if I want to add anything, Wendy, that was really thorough about this kind of listening is really quite different from um, the way we've witnessed, I would have to say. There's um, I'll speak from my personal experience that it is like night and day. You can tell when somebody is really there with you and when somebody is up in their head just formulating their reply, their response, making sure that they agree or let you know how they disagree. And so we're going to go over all those things with you. And we want you to recognize that we all tend to do the same thing. This is just going to up your understanding of how to drop into that deeper place and not expect it from other people. because it's unusual. And you're gonna, if you haven't already seen this in other programs of other three principles practitioners or programs that Wendy and I have been involved in, then you're certainly going to see it today.
Mhm, mhm,
And that's what I'm so passionate about, sharing this with people because it really makes a difference,
mhm,
not only for the person being listened to, but for the listener. It is so such a peaceful place to be, and it also um, is an opportunity to drop into that open mind, clear mind, presence. You know, everybody, not just people in the three principles community, everybody's talking about presence,
mhm,
being in the moment,
mhm,
value of that.
mhm,
That's our place of well-being,
mhm.
where our innate health shines.
Yeah, so I invite you to listen to this webinar kind of like with an open hand. Just let things fall in. Just the whole webinar is a exercise in listening deeply or listening without any preconceived notions or any distractions. Now, that's kind of difficult, you know. A dog or a cat could come running in this room right now and distract me. But you understand, listen, it's been often said to listen like we're listening to music. So I don't know about you. I am not a musician, but I do like to sing. So once in a while, when I hear a bad note that somebody sung, I might say, "Oh, they went a little flat there. They went," but in general, I'm listening to a song and I'm bouncing around, I'm enjoying it, or I'm, enjoying an orchestra or something like that. I don't pick it apart and I just let it come in and soothe. And so that's what we invite you to do is try this on for this little bit of time, is listening with kind of like nothing on your mind and just kind of letting things come in, kind of listening behind the listening. I think probably it's very universal that somebody will say, "I'm fine, I'm okay." And you know they're not fine, you know they're not okay. So you're already listening, right? Beyond the words. In that case, you're already noticing something. The difference with deep listening is that maybe with active listening, I might say, "Oh, come on, you don't seem to be okay." But with deep listening, you kind of just leaning in. And the most important thing when you're conscious of deep listening, when you're aware that that's what you want to do with somebody, is what they're trying to communicate to you is the most important thing in that moment, in that time. That's you want to drop away everything else that's got to do with you, what you might think about what they're saying, and just be, I really hope that they have such a listening ear in me that they can say exactly what they need to say and it's going to be I'm what they want to communicate is what's most important and their words may fail, right? But that's the presence that you want to bring to it. So that's kind of what deep listening really is bringing a present, perhaps the gift of, and a presence to a conversation with people. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be sitting quietly in a room face to face. This could be happening at the grocery store with somebody that's saying, "Oh, I don't know what to make for dinner tonight." It could be even in there. There's something beautiful about being seen, heard, and understood, and giving that gift to other people. So that's what we're talking about here. So,
Just gonna say a few words before we go
yeah,
on to our moment of pause. Well, I'll introduce that to everybody in a minute because there's still people coming on.
okay.
Um, so yeah, just to kind of give you a quick synopsis, as you're listening to this program that Wendy and I are presenting, you want to you'll have your own thoughts. There's no way to turn thinking off. You'll have thoughts. The tendency might be to compare. Um, oh, this sounds like Zen, or this sounds like Buddhism. We've heard lots of things like that. And, there's truth everywhere, there's essence everywhere. But you want to be as present as possible. So if you notice those thoughts coming in, comparing, contrasting, wondering, judging, wondering where you fit in, all that stuff, it's like in one ear, out the other, nothing you have to pay attention to. And so that's why this feels like such a great moment, 90 minutes for us to be in a place of not thinking about anything but what comes and flows through us. So, with that said, let's take a few minutes and just get really quiet in our head. And Wendy will do the dinger. Like Jack, does this with his Tibetan bells. He's been
Yeah.
doing that for the last 25 years before
Yeah.
the program to get everybody in the room into a quiet space. So Wendy will do the
I'll
visual
just say,
signs to bring you back in.
yeah, let's just all, yeah, we just thought we just take a minute to just take a couple of deep breaths and just kind of be in the room. I know for Lori and I preparing for this and getting the Zoom this to Zoom that, da, 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 da. So it'd be great to just take a couple of half a minute or so to just take a deep breath and be quiet. Great. So Lori has a question for us.
Yeah. So before I get to that question, did you notice things springing to mind, right? Like it could just be this whirlwind of bees in a hive sometimes. And feeling that feeling of a busy mind is really useful. There's a psychiatrist who calls things like that love letters from the universe. Some of you know Dr. Bill Pettit. It's a love letter when we get all, we get that feeling of overwhelm and so much in our thinking. And that's beautiful that we're created that way, that we're made to feel our thinking, because that's our alert. That's what lets us know when we just time to settle down, time to settle the bees down in the hive, rest time.
Mhm.
Because you're going to get a deeper intelligence that comes through your heart, comes from your heart, as opposed to stuff that comes from the head. Now we need the brain, that's for sure. We need our head, our brain to get around this physical plane, but we overuse it. Yeah. So everybody ready for something to see what comes to you, to see what comes to you. If you could bring to mind a time that you wanted someone to understand you in the worst way, right? But the person listening was either distracted, judgmental, even maybe disagreeable, and maybe they tried to change your mind, right? Um, or they try to get you to feel better. That's a popular one, and it comes with good intentions, but not what you were hoping to receive from the listener. I don't want to feel better. I'm where I am. Please accept me where I am. That's how most of us want to be listened to. So who has an example? Who came to your mind? Love to hear from you. Just unmute yourself.
Elaine? Is somebody named Elaine unmuted? No? Okay. Paul, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
You have to unmute, Paul.
Well, I can just think when I was having a conversation with a friend, when I brought up, I don't remember exactly what I brought up, but it was some sort of dissatisfaction in the way the conversation was going. And the person lit into me and read me the whole riot act in all 7 acts, and so that's my example. Not that it was unexpected, because this is the way this person's mind works, but it was really something. I think I saved it on my in my text messages for future reference if I need it.
Mm.
It's humorous, isn't it? And it's innocent. That person had no idea that that was not going to connect you. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Elaine, did you want to share something?
I had a thought and then I lost it, so I was trying to bring it back.
Oh, okay.
You were practicing in one ear, out the other.
Yeah,
Yes.
right,
Oh,
right, right. Anyone else have something where they said, wow, that was just really a frustrating time when I just wasn't being heard? David, go ahead.
Laura, yeah. Last evening, I was having my wife and I were having dinner with two friends, and one of the friends asked me what what I've been doing. Just sort of, what have you been up to today? What's been happening for you? So I started to just sort of share what I've been doing, and then I realised that all three other people were paying attention to something else. They'd just gone. They literally turned their attention to, I don't know what it was, with something to do with the meal, but I just realised I was just absolutely talking into midair, into air. And there was that moment, and I thought, well, okay, well, I just keep going. They might tune back in again, or maybe they just, I haven't got anything of any value for them. But it was just that moment when I just realised I was just sort of speaking to no attention.
Mm.
So that was a recent. I found it quite frustrating, actually.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking across them. They'd asked me, so I just volunteering information. So
They asked you and then they stopped listening. That's an
yeah,
interesting thing.
yeah. Tell us about your day. Well,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they'd all drifted off. Anyway, there you go. That's just an example of
Thank
just last
you.
night.
Let's last night. Hey, Dale, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Great example, David. Dale's up next, yeah.
I have one that I work on a lot. I have a good friend who is a good friend and he means well, but he has a habit, and one of my values is authenticity and to speak from authenticity. So if I say something, it means this is who I am and this is what I mean. He has a habit of jumping in with what he thinks he heard me say, and 9 out of 10 times that's not what I said. So I'm hearing back, like I'll make a comment and he'll say, well, and he'll just try and simplify it into some platitude. And he means well. it's a habit, but it's frustrating.
Mm.
So I've talked to a therapist about it and I work on it. I just work on it. It's
Mm.
something about that when somebody sums me up incorrectly
Mm. Mm.
in conversation, it
Mm.
strikes at the chord of that's not who I am, that's not what I'm saying, and I want to correct it. But then now we're in conflict. And so I'm struggling. But I work on it. Some weeks are better than others.
Mm. That's a great example. What I heard, and I'm afraid I got stuck listening to you when you said the word habit. I was like, oh, that's such a perfect word
It's a
to
habit.
describe what most of us do all the time. It's a habit. We're thinking a couple of steps ahead. Our kid comes to us and says, I'm not going to go, my stomach hurts, I'm not going to go to school. And you're thinking about the 5 things that you're going to say to them to, like, oh yeah, I got your number, kid. I know what you're talking about. Or it's a habit. And especially in our northern hemisphere sort of college educated group of humans, we're supposed to be, planning ahead and thinking ahead and so forth. And that there's something, I don't know, like it's not wise. It's not a good use of time. Unless somebody says, could I please talk to you and have an emotion, something. But we're suggesting that deep listening or listening, the gift of listening to somebody and really seeing somebody is a gift that we can give or receive any day and any time. So Dale, I'm so glad that you brought that up in general, because you have such a great awareness of saying, I know what trips me up in this relationship is when you try to platitude me or summarize me up. And I know it's a habit on your part. So that's great. You have a lot of insight there. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Hey, Jerry, let's unmute.
The thing that come to mind to me when she said that um, is getting them to listen at all. Put the phone down, or even when you're talking to somebody in a room, they're listening to something else instead of even being in the conversation. But the phone is the biggest thing that drives me crazy. It's like they don't even look at you.
Mhm.
That's the main one for me.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. The distractions that just is so prevalent in society is we've sped up so much.
Hmm.
And so, well, you ready for the next question for the group? We're going to go in the opposite direction. Bring to mind a time you were listened to beautifully. You loved it, felt so great. Finally, somebody gets me. When you really felt seen, heard, and understood. Give you a minute to bring somebody to mind. This may take a little longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just raise your digital hand when you want to share the experience, what it felt like. You all know about the digital hand, or you
Hey,
could just
go ahead,
unmute.
Paul. Unmute yourself, Paul.
Yeah. Okay. So what comes up for me? This was a time when I was a kid, and I was taking saxophone lessons, and this just sticks in my mind. It's what we got at this moment. Okay, and I wanted to be extra clean with my saxophone, so I took my mouthpiece and I boiled it. And when it came out of the pot, uh, it it was all distorted. It wasn't any good as a mouthpiece anymore. And my mom called the sax teacher to say, and said that Paul had boiled his mouthpiece. And the sax teacher replied, "Did it come out hard boiled or soft boiled?" and so I took that as being accepted, you know. In other words, he was just being with whatever happened and able to take it lightly. And so that sticks in my mind after you know, about 65 years.
That's really something, isn't it? That long that made such an impression on you that you felt, now I can take a deep breath and relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the way you describe that too. That really went deep for me. They really took it lightly. And that, you know, that's a beautiful feeling when you know, I mean, my husband does that with me all the time. Like I'll say, "Oh gosh, I just, you know, burned the roast or whatever." He goes, "That's all right. I don't care." Like, just takes things lightly and you know, sees past the circumstance to the fact that he cares about me. You know, there's something in that taking something lightly. That was a beautiful example, Paul. Thank you. There's somebody, no, okay. Does anybody else have an raise a digital hand on a positive time when you felt seen, heard, or understood?
We could use at least one more to balance out the bad
I know,
listeners.
right? Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Okay. Lower my hand. There we go. I think the difference between sharing an idea or something with family and a client. And I sometimes think I should actually charge my family a fee because it seems that clients are willing to listen more than, you know, more than the family. Maybe it's because they're paying, but it's a lovely moment. It is a lovely moment when somebody says, you know, that what you've just said there's really impacted. And I can say the same thing to family members, and they'll go, "It's just dad," or "It's just." So yeah, that's my one of the pleasure of sitting with somebody and knowing they've heard. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
Wendy's
lovely.
back.
Wendy?
Yes,
Oh.
is Stephanie unmuted?
I am. I think I am. Did
Yeah,
I
go
unmute?
ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, so I was just thinking just last week, I saw a new practitioner who I've had, years of asthma and all sorts of ailments and whatever. So I chose a new practitioner, met with her for about an hour and a half. And I walked out of there and I was like, that was the first time I ever felt anyone ever got me. Like she listened, she heard, she understood, she asked questions. She was just just her attention for an hour and a half was all just on me. And I was just like, finally, right? Like somebody gets me and I'm not just complaining about my asthma or whatever, she actually was like, you know, thinking, okay, how am I going to help this? Right? How am I going to make this better? And it was awesome. It was a good feeling.
Yeah. I have a curiosity question. I'm all about before, during, and after kind of thing, before and after. So Stephanie, if you can think, if this makes sense to you, see if it does. You walked out of 5 other practitioners' offices in the last 10 years about your asthma. I think you just said the word asthma. And if you could measure in your head, like a 10 would be, wow, I felt so heard and understood. And I feel so much better after meeting with that person.
Mhm.
And 1 is, I felt no different. That was a waste of my time, a waste of my money. I can't believe it. I almost feel worse for going in. If
Right.
you could say, what you felt like with this most recent example in terms of 1 being lousy and 10 being wow.
Mhm.
And what I'm trying to get at is what was the value in some respects to your own overall sense of well-being by being listened, heard, and understood? Can you kind of quantify it a little bit?
I mean, I walked out of there a 10, right? Like she was
Yep,
a
she was a
10. I
10. Yep.
completely felt like someone finally figured me out after
Right.
all these years, and it was great. And I actually I felt hope for the first time, in a long time, like whereas the other doctors were like maybe a 2. I had one doctor that was probably an 8, and then he passed away, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
it's just
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Especially when it comes to health matters, being understood is kind of like an important part of feeling like you're going to get
Absolutely.
better. Yeah.
Further
Absolutely.
bananas you could chime on tonight. It's gonna all fall out if you grab that, it'll all
Oops.
fall to the floor.
Oh, okay. I shut that one off. I hope. Sorry. All right. Well, thank you very much for that, Stephanie. That's really a
Great example.
great example of what that is. And I want to point out the fact I'm making, Karan, I'm going to get to you in a second. I'm going to make a guess. Stephanie, you can weigh in or not. You don't have to. But my suspicion is that the practitioner was not silent during your meeting. So lest you think that deep listening means silence and not, no, it doesn't mean that. It just means like a curiosity,
Yeah.
an interest. And like I said to you before, making that other person, whatever they're trying to communicate to me, that's the most important thing to me, the listener in this dialogue or this dyad,
Mhm.
what they're trying to say. So it sounds like that practitioner, that physician or NP or whatever it really was really, really interested in what you had to say and was really interested. And like I said, am I right? They weren't silent for the entire appointment and you were the only one that spoke. Is that
Not,
accurate?
yeah, correct. It was just the 2 of us, but she asked questions, deep, deep questions that like at the time seemed kind of irrelevant, but made complete sense afterwards. She took in my whole life, basically, like
Yeah.
from start to now, and was asking not just, oh, what are your current symptoms, right? Like, oh, I'm going to fix you now with these current symptoms. Like, she went into like deep detail about, my childhood, your infancy and all that. It was great. It was really great.
That's wonderful. That's great. What a great example. Thank you. Hey, Karan, tell us what's going on. Great.
So years and years ago, I read a book on communication. The first thing that they taught was listen, listen, listen. Listening is the most important part of communication. So I read that. I also learned that people's favorite subject is themselves. So over the years, I've been talking to people, and what happens? I listen, they speak. And what we talk about is mostly them. So I've never found any good listener who could listen to me. So when I start talking, they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then they come to themselves. So what does it take to find a good listener? I mean, I'm a great listener myself. I listen to people. But when it comes to me, I don't find anybody listening to me for a long time. Or even if some people listen to me, they're doing it out of being polite, not curiosity.
Mm, mm, mm. That's
But no
wonderful.
complaint. I enjoy conversation, but just curious to know about that.
Yeah. So
I bet a lot of us on this call could second that.
yeah,
Yeah,
to
David.
find somebody that listens. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's
That's
part of
why
yeah.
Wendy and I are doing what we're doing because and that's why Wendy calls it rippling out. Because as you become better listeners, the people you're listening to, they're gonna feel it. They're gonna feel what Karan just described. And what Stephanie described about feeling heard, like finally somebody gets me. I love how Stephanie said, some of the questions seem so irrelevant at first. But when we get into more of the deep listening, like breaking you up in breakout rooms, you're going to see that your own curiosity. Sometimes the question might land on the speaker as well. That was kind of out in left field, like Stephanie's experience, but then they begin to realize from their own wisdom that off the wall question you just asked that came from your wisdom actually hit a chord.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really cool.
And speaking of that off the wall stuff, that speaks to what we wanted to share with you too about this concept of separate realities. So Stephanie said, why are you asking me about whatever the person was asking you about? I'm here to talk to you about my asthma. Why are you asking me about, my last vacation or whatever? I'm just making up a story. It doesn't matter. But separate realities, everybody sees things from their own perspective. And that's a huge part of what this concept of deep listening is born out of understanding that we all experience life from the inside out. And I don't know about you, but I was certainly raised to see things in the world and to manage things in the world. Like, oh, I better manage that. I can't cope with that. I can't do this, or I need that, or so forth. I found myself whacking a mole all day long. And if all the moles were flat in their little beds, then I had a good day. And if one mole popped out, but now I understand it's how I am dealing with or thinking about the moles. It's not the moles. Life is full of moles, I've come to find out. So separate realities. So here's a really interesting way of looking at separate realities. Who here has a great little story that you can tell of going to the movies with somebody else, whoever that is, and you both walk out of the movie theater and one of you says, wasn't that the best? It was so good. And the other one goes, what are you talking about? That was one of the worst. I talk about it, or whatever, or that was really scary, or oh my gosh, I was bored to tears. Oh my goodness, this is a big one. All right, Katrina, let's see what you have to say about that.
That was a really good example because I can remember going to the cinema with a couple of friends, and at the time I couldn't get in or out without a wheelchair.
Oh.
So once was in, was in. And we went to watch this film called Hotel Paradiso, which was supposed to be a comedy. And I sat there between my two friends and I'd watched this film and I was thinking, this is terrible. This is just not funny. And I sat there, and either side of me, they were rocking in, holding their sides, laughing. What are you laughing at? This isn't funny. Which just made them laugh even more. And I know, I remember thinking, if I didn't need them to take me out, I'd have just gone and waited in foyer. But because I needed them and they were enjoying it, I had to sit through it. And I didn't find anything funny in the entire film. And they came out exhausted from laughing so much.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it in the end because I was enjoying the fact that they thought it was so funny and I didn't. And it just seemed so bizarre.
Yeah. That's a great example. That's a great
It's
example.
easy to see that in movies. you know, different tastes. People, some people like rom-com, some people like adventure, right? It's kind of easy to see in movies, but when you start talking to a relative and politics comes into the mix, or, you know, all those kinds of things that really trigger people, then it's a little tougher to recognize separate realities, because my reality is the right one, right? But it is so helpful in deep listening to really see this deeply, that we're all living in our own little reality bubble, given 100 million things, our parents, our past experiences, how we interpreted those experiences, the movies we've seen and liked, the movies we've seen, I mean, a gazillion things. Teachers, grandparents, they've all put a lot of stuff in our heads.
Right. Yeah. Our conditioning.
Up the wazookie.
Yeah.
Wendy.
Hey, Joyce, you got something you want to say? Please unmute. There you go.
Yes, I think it's also true of books. I think it's even more true of books than it is of videos, because as you're reading it, you're hearing your own inner voice as you're reading. And I just, to speak to what you said, Wendy, in terms of where you're coming from and your reality at the moment and how you perceive what's going on. My favorite example is I read Joy Luck Club when I was probably, which is about an Asian girl trying to adapt to the modern culture of this world, and how her parents want her to remain traditional and cultural to the Chinese culture. And the first time I read it, and I totally agreed with put myself in the situation of the young girl, because I was of her age. And so everything that I read in the context of what she was feeling, and I didn't understand the mother at all. I subsequently read that when I was about 7 years old, and I totally understood the mother, and I didn't get the kid at all. So I totally agree that it's where you are in your stage in life, and how you have to understand where someone else is, not necessarily what you are in that. And that's probably the most definitive example I could give.
That's great. That's great. Does everybody remember, I think it was last year's Academy Awards. My husband Jeff and I went to see the movie because everybody was talking about it. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, however many words there were. My husband and I sat there, and we didn't have a separate reality from each other, but we were in complete alliance on, what is this movie? This is the strangest, silliest. Why did we spend $15 of our hard-earned money per ticket on this movie? And we just kept waiting, saying, surely there's going to be some, because people were talking about it. And then it comes up, and it's up for like 10 Academy Awards, and we still just shake our heads going, I don't know. Oh, so separate realities. It's a real thing, right? And so when you're in when you want to bring more of this gift to other human beings in your life, kind of just going, I'm going to try to just really be totally interested in that person's reality, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, what they're feeling.
Without judgment.
Without judgment, yeah.
Right?
Without not only, yeah, or without distraction. Like I loved what, I think it was Jerry that said, the phones. I mean, I love my sister. She's a number of years older than me, but I go to visit her, and she's just scrolling on the phone. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And she's a lot older than me. You can see I'm pretty gray. And my sister's a lot older than me, and I'm hoping that, we get to spend some more time talking face to face, So anyway, yeah, the distraction piece. So just really just being present with somebody, sounds like the provider was with Stephanie.
But just to come back to separate realities for a minute too, is, when you really see the fact of we're all human, and yet we're creating our experience the same way through our own thinking, and yet we're in this separate thought bubble. It alleviates criticism or judgment. That's the word I'm looking for. It alleviates judgment, because if you're listening to somebody but you're judging their reality, that's not listening to them. That's listening to your reality, judging them.
Great distinction. Are we listening to the other person, or are we listening to what we think about what they're saying?
Right.
Wonderful distinction. Wonderful distinction. And there really is a difference. But it's innocent. I really want to share that this is not, we're not getting up in the morning and trying to be distracted or judgmental, or we have a habit, and it's an innocent habit. And so we're just raising awareness in this conversation, and you're going to, that there's a broader perspective, and and we all know what it feels like to be like our friend Paul, whose teacher said, was it hard boiled or soft boiled? We'll get you another mouthpiece, right? So it's beautiful. Hey, Karan, tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So you talked about, like, are you listening to the other person or yourself thinking? So back when I was in college, I would, approach girls and talk to them. So I would often think about what to say next, looking at the person, making some assumption. So the thing is that you can't hold a conversation long enough if you don't have enough content to talk about. So I approached many girls, talked to them. I read some routines and techniques. Fine. But one day I went all present. I approached a girl, stopped her, I was present. And she was there. And she could feel the energy, and the conversation was amazing. There was silence, but no awkwardness. And it was just the energy that we could share. So it's not about thinking about what to say next. It's about being present and allowing things to flow through. I guess that's the difference between trying to impress the other person or rather than being present.
Yeah.
That really works.
That
when
was
you are
beautiful.
present, it really works. Yeah.
I think what you just said, that if I could remember, because I'm using my mind to think right now and listening to you, I think you said something beautiful, that there was silences, but not awkward.
Yeah.
Isn't
beautiful?
I felt that went way down deep. Like, I love what that feels like when you're in mutual silence with somebody, but it isn't awkward. Oh, that feels great.
And guess
That's
what?
more peace in the moment.
Half the room knows this. I know, if not more than half. But even though we know this, it's good to be reminded of it. You know what creates awkward? Our own thinking. There's something wrong. There's empty space. One of us should be talking. Maybe the other person feels uncomfortable. We've got all this stuff going on in our head about. That's what makes it awkward. So that was beautiful, Karan, that you brought that up. Like you didn't feel awkward because you didn't have any of that going on in your head. You were just glad to be in the same space with this person, sharing energy.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
lovely. That's lovely. Great.
Yeah.
Well, we would like you guys to have an experience of doing some deep listening. And I hope this doesn't scare you off. We're going to ask you to just hang out with somebody, and it's going to be random, and spend a few minutes sharing on your favorite book. Nothing deep, nothing, it doesn't have to be deep. If you want to go deep, doesn't matter, but just sharing on your favorite book. And then the other person will listen.
Either one. So,
okay, it can be a book or a movie, and it doesn't matter. And then the other person will just listen And we just want the listener to be aware of going, wow, I remember I read that book and I don't agree. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just put that to the side now. You're going to have things come up. This is kind of, maybe newer territory. So don't worry about it. And you don't have to have your camera on, okay? But we're going to just ask you to just spend a few minutes, and it'll be about 3 minutes or so to share on your favorite book, and I'll let you know when you can switch over to the other person and just listen and notice what it's like to listen. Okay? Anything else, Lori, before we?
Yeah, let me see. I think you covered it all. Let me see if anything else comes. Yeah, it's just gentle, you know. And Wendy's going to be at the command central here, breaking you up into breakout rooms, and it's all, yeah. So have fun with it. Have fun with it, and there's nothing you have to do as the listener except listen. It should be really a nice feeling
Mhm.
when you don't have anything else you have to do, right?
Right. Okay, spend a few minutes, just 3 minutes describing your favorite book or your favorite movie.
Have fun, enjoy, and we'll bring you back in.
So anybody want to share a little bit about what that was like, either in either seat, the listener or the speaker? What did you become
About it.
aware of?
Elaine, you're lit up, or you were lit up a minute ago. Did you want to share with us?
I was quite comfortable in the breakout rooms and being the listener as well as the speaker. This is something that I do, quite often in my profession. So it was comfortable. It was great to meet new people and to hear about their books that they have read or the movies that they have watched and how it impacted their lives.
Yeah.
So the ability to be able to hear what we were talking about and being present was very evident during our session.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Nice.
Great.
Yeah. Who else? Thank you.
Any other experiences? Yeah, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah.
I get a little anxious. I think I have some social anxiety when I'm speaking in a pod, and I know we're doing deep listening. I do this in a meditation group. It's an international meditation group when we break into pods and we practice this. And I get a little anxious because I know they can't talk, and then I'm hearing myself talk and I'm not used to hearing myself. And I don't know when to stop, and I get a little nervous and I try and finish it up fast. Brings up my social anxiety.
Yeah.
And I like it.
Yeah.
Too. It's a mixed bag.
There's a famous quote by a colleague of ours named Mavis, if I could find it quickly. Here it is. I just found it. Here's this might, and this
What's going on?
and this social anxiety, by the way, which is just a label that is meant to describe a current situation, how we all feel social anxiety at one point or another at different times. The older I get, the less I feel it because I'm more in a state of not caring. I'm not caring, I know I'm coming from my best self. I know I'm coming from my heart, and however people hear me, I can't be responsible for that. But this is a quote from Mavis. I think you'll like it. Whatever the other person wants to get across to you is more important than anything you are thinking. Isn't that beautiful? Wendy shared that with me from our friend Mavis, who wrote a book called It's That Simple. Great title of a book.
Yeah.
And
what they're saying is more important than anything I am thinking. And that's a habit that we aren't used to. I mean, a habit we've developed to not do that. So that's kind of interesting. Hey, Karan, what's going on?
Yeah. So talking about social anxiety, uh, when I was in my teenage and early 20s, so whenever I would talk to new people and go public speaking, my heart would start beating very fast, and I had some kind of nervousness, but uh, I would do it anyway sometimes. Sometimes I wouldn't. And after learning the skills, it got better. And now, after learning about the principles, I realized that it's just my thinking. So it's normal for me to have this nervousness, which every single person has, because it's human nature to feel afraid of something new. Okay, survival mode. So now what happens? I talk to somebody new, I go public speaking, heart starts beating, there's nervousness, but I don't pay attention. And within a minute, I'm in the zone talking to people and having fun. So it seems to me that we are all the same. It's just the thinking that we entertain, and with practice, it can all get better. And
That's
if you don't
beautiful.
entertain that thinking, it just goes away.
Mm.
So, yeah.
And
And talking,
thanks, Corin. I'm so glad you brought that up. When I was a child, my mother would tell people, well, she's shy. Kind of got me off the hook, I guess. So I grew up thinking I was a shy person, just to piggyback off of what Karan was saying. And then at some point, I stopped caring about what people thought about whatever I had to say.
Mm.
I guess we are never shy or anything at all. It's the experience that gives us the identity, the label, and we live with that self-fulfilling prophecy. We are always present to the moment with nothing in our mind, and everything just flows, whether it is public speaking, talking to a person. If you don't have this going on, it's all good.
Mm.
But there are different scenarios. I
Mm.
mean, sometimes you have to be careful who you're talking to. But I guess confidence is always within in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the moment. Look at Elaine nodding her head vociferously. Anybody else have something to share from the experience of doing some listening?
Katrina, you want to unmute Katrina? Yeah, great.
I I wanted longer. I wanted to hear more.
You wanted to hear more?
Yeah, I wanted to hear more.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
And when I was sharing, I shared second. I wanted to share more. So obviously I felt listened to.
Mm. Yeah.
Nice. When you're left feeling like you want more, that's that deep space that Wendy and I are talking about. You're left feeling like you want more. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. All right. Are you guys up for one more round of doing something a little bit different with another listening time together, and then we'll close this out?
Before we go into that, let's do our little just in case somebody accidentally gets dropped out, or just we just want to make sure that you all know that we're going to be sending you
Invitations.
invitations. Yes. And Wendy started this ebook. I love it. We created an ebook together. How long did it take? We had 9 iterations of it,
Yeah.
but I'm really, really thrilled about it. It's short, it's very short, but when you get our invitation, you'll see how to get the ebook.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add before we break up? And I'll explain a little bit about this next breakout. But anything you want to add before I?
No, except that the ebook was really fun to to write, and it's called The Gift of Deep Listening. And so I have it labeled as version 1 because I'm sure there's going to be more wisdom that'll come through as Lori and I are working together with the ripples, like I say, the rippling out of this wonderful space for people. So that's version 1. So we're going to be looking forward to sending that out to you. But no, I don't think so. So one more round of random connections, and then we'll come back and have a little bit of how that was, and we'll say goodbye and thank you for your time today. All right, so what do we
All
want? What's the subject for this round, Lori?
So you want to share something about your favorite relative, right?
Yep.
What made them favorite? Um, what stood out for you? That's all.
Any comments or observations on that last exercise or anything that you've heard in this last bit of time in our time together? Well, we only have another 7 or 8 minutes, so we want to be conscious of your time and thank you for this. So we'd love to hear anything that anybody wants to say about anything. All right, Cynthia, you're up.
Golden hand from
Golden hand, there you go. I'm afraid I can't make my camera work, so sorry about that. It was working and I had to switch computers. But I just want to say that I love the breakouts because you get to go one-on-one with people and go, oh yeah, they're great. And what I find is the openness is, and Karan and I were talking about this too, is when you're in a space of love, but not like I love you, but like love is what's so. It's okay. It's a fundamental okayness with everybody. They can do what they can say what they need to say or whatever. There's no problem because it's just this is the insight, what it's an insight, and Karan saying this, you know it's an insight when there's a sense of peace and calm, and Karan can probably say it far better than I can, but that really struck with me, and I totally enjoyed listening to Karan and Jerry, and I feel the same way. I would like more time, so it was really fun. Thanks, guys.
Great. Any other comments or observations? Hey,
How
Katrina, go ahead.
I like that space of love, being in the space of love.
Yeah.
Right on. True. It's really true. Katrina.
Once again, there wasn't enough time, and I was very honored by Paul's sharing. It was very beautiful and open and vulnerable, and I didn't want to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
That's a beautiful feeling. Yeah.
See what we can give to
Very moving.
strangers. See what we can do for strangers. It just touches deeply to really, I love what Cynthia used, that fundamental okayness, that if we just really touch that more often in the day with the person that delivers the mail, with the person we live with, that there's a fundamental okayness that's just hovering in and around human beings. It's kind of lovely. Yeah. Patty, go ahead.
Funny that you say that, Wendy, because something I've noticed recently is how thrown people are when you make direct eye contact with them, and how thrilled they are when you make direct eye contact with them. And it doesn't matter where I go. It does not matter how old the person is. I went to Five Guys yesterday to get my burger and fries, and the kid that gave me the thing, he hands me the bag, and I held the bag for a second, and I looked him right in the eye, and I said, thank you. And you see, they light up. It's just not the same old, here you go, nobody looking at anybody. So even that little bit of presence is huge. Absolutely huge. Just being in that space of love, Lori, yes?
I felt that.
Beautiful, Patty. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Somebody else have something to share? We only have another couple of minutes.
Boy, time goes fast, huh?
It does. It does. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I kind of relate it to meditation in a few ways. The listening is like meditation. I guess one thing I would say, it feels like letting go of myself, the part of me that I've been dragging around with its concerns and whatever else is going on about the past or the future or the present. But letting go of the self, and you just sort of drop into this different state. And it just occurred to me too that one kind of meditation is paying attention to the breath, or some people would pay attention to a candle or whatever, and the breath or the candle, whatever other function it might have, it was to draw your attention away from your usual thoughts, in order to be more present with your authentic natural self that's always there and never changes. And it just seems like having another person there to listen to, well, that's even better than having a candle or your breath. That's less predictable, something you can be curious about as you let go of your everyday self that's been wearing you out, and gives you a chance to be present with your changeless self, which feels so nice.
That's lovely.
Beautiful. Yeah. Our true essence is what you just described, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And in fact, we didn't even talk about the whole aspect of listening to ourself, as in listening to the wisdom that comes through us, as opposed to our personal thinking. So the way you listen to each other during these breakouts is a way to listen to yourself with a quiet mind, out of all the personal thinking. And that leaves room for wisdom to come, common sense.
The classic example of listening to yourself or whatever is something's going on. I need to fix this. This is I need to figure out the solution here. And then when you're not thinking, you're in the shower, you're driving to work, or you're whatever, you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, and you didn't even realize it. Like when there's a quiet mind, then you can hear. I remember my 17-year-old son, he's 34 now, so this is 17 years ago. I can still see him sitting in the living room with his head in his hands going, I just want to hear myself think. I can't hear myself think. And what I believe he was saying was there was so much going on that he didn't know what he really felt, what he really thought, what he really needed, what he really was experiencing. And I remember my heart went out to him then. I was like, oh, I wish I could take all that head trash away, but I can't. But I love what you're saying there, Paul, about the practice of meditation is concentrating on something else other than self. So when you're concentrating on the other person, or when you're being available to that other person, it for them and for you, it can be a gift. So that's why we call it the gift of deep listening, because it really is the gift that keeps on giving. All right, well, it's 2:30. Again, thank you all so much for coming.